Hello lovely people, my name is Emma and please ignore any background noise. My rabbits decided to eat a cardboard box at my feet. Today I'm bringing you another overly specific book recommendations, and this time it's non-fiction books that I really wish a different author had written. I did this for fiction books probably a good 3 weeks ago now, and I kind of said in that video, do you want a non-fiction one? And a lot of people said yes, and then I got distracted with lots of like women in history content that I wanted to do. But we're now back on it, and I've got 4 books for you that are non-fiction that were a great idea but just really poorly executed, and I really wish a different author would attempt them because I desperately want to read about these topics, but not from the author in question. The first contender on this list is Incredible Journeys: Exploring the Wonders of Animal Navigation by David Barrie. Like the subtitle suggests, this is a book that is looking at the various different ways that animals navigate throughout the world, whether it be things like echolocation or magnetic fields or all sorts of things like that. I read this last year for Springathon, and I was really hoping, it was actually like a viewer pick, and I was really hoping I was going to enjoy it, but it's just such a mess structurally. David Barrie is not a scientist, and I think it's really apparent looking through it because everything is jumbled up together. There's no sort of really clear delineation between the different chapters. It's not like he focuses on one animal or one group of animals and then kind of covers the different ways that they can navigate, nor is it like he covers one particular mode of navigation and kind of covers the various animals that fit in with that. It's very mishmashed and all over the place, and he often refers to what humans do, which is not why I bought the book. So if I were to kind of wave my magic wand and get this book to be rewritten, I'd either love it to be by a scientist who specialises in this area, because they are always the best when it comes to writing these style of books, even if they can be a little bit dry at times, or I'd actually probably want somebody like Mary Roach to take this on. Mary Roach is a fantastic science writer, but she's really a layperson who kind of comes into a specific area and does a lot of kind of research in her due diligence, and is very good at grouping things together. So when you read her books, they always have a specific theme, and then each individual chapter will take on a different area of that theme. For example, the first book of hers I read is Grunt, which is about the various kind of scientific advancements made within the army, specifically looking at like keeping people alive rather than ways of like trying to kill more of the enemy as such. So it looks at things like submarine rescue and the way that that's evolved, various differences in prosthetics and kind of how that has improved over the years. Also things like how we can use crash test dummies to learn how like IEDs and various things like that end up impacting the body. But each one of these is a different chapter, different section, and it's very clearly delineated throughout the book what we're talking about, and she has a very good grasp on something that she really is not a specialist in. So I really wish that she'd take this kind of a topic and just run with it, because I think that she would be fantastic. The next book I have to talk about is a medical memoir, and that's The Prison Doctor by Amanda Brown. This is the memoir of a woman who was a doctor in various prisons, as the title again suggests, and basically she just didn't say anything meaningful throughout the entire story. It was the most mundane, boring memoir I've ever read in my entire life. There was no nuance or details about like the prison system overall, medicine within the prison system, kind of the different, because she worked in both the women's and juvenile prisons, I believe, and like GV centres, and there was no kind of conversation about comparisons. There was a lot of discussions about drug addicts, which you are going to see quite a lot in prisons, and there was no discussion about how you treat them medically or how you work out any of these things. There was like real flippant commentary about suicide. Basically it was a super surface level look at her life in general, and it felt really like a cash grab off the back of sort of the success of things like When Breath Becomes Air or This Is Gonna Hurt, or many of the medical memoirs out there that have done very well recently. I've read a fair number of medical memoirs. This is my least favourite by far. Obviously it's quite hard to know who would rewrite this because it's her own life, but ultimately when I'm reading a medical memoir, I'm constantly trying to chase that high that was This Is Gonna Hurt by Adam Kay, which I think really benefited from the fact that Adam Kay's one was a diary of his time at the time, so it felt a lot more visceral, a lot more immediate, and then he had like footnotes of him looking back onto it, whereas a lot of these memoirs of somebody looking back over their whole career and then trying to comment on it like post hoc, I don't think work anywhere near as well. You don't get that immediacy of the emotion. The only book on this list that I did not finish was Sex with Kings by Eleanor Harman. This is supposed to be a history book looking at the role of the mistress within kind of royalty throughout the years, and basically this is a perfect example of why just because you are from a marginalised group does not mean that you are going to be necessarily sympathetic to said marginalised group. Eleanor Harman identifies as a woman, I believe, and she was scathing about all of the women in this history book. I kind of read about 50 to 70 pages, I think, and I was just like, I can't handle this woman being so mean and catty about other women anymore. She really, like, every mistress was either like a harpy or a shrew or a bitch. They either used their feminine wiles to get what they wanted or are ugly as sin, and that was like their biggest moral failing. There was no real conversation as to like why someone would want to become the mistress of a king, how much choice you had as to becoming the mistress of a king. You know, a good example of that, whilst not mistress but actual queen, is Catherine Parr, who did not want to marry Henry VIII, had her own kind of lover going on that she was going to try and marry, but hey, when the king says marry, you marry. And like, there was no conversation about any of that nuance. It was also structured very badly. It jumped around from queen to queen and time period to time period, and the whole thing was a total mess. Now, if I could wave my magic wand, I think I would like Hayley Rubenhold to write this book for me. Pretty please, Hayley, if by some miraculous way you're watching this. Hayley Rubenhold is most well known for The Five, which is an incredible look at Victorian history, specifically the 5 women that Jack the Ripper murdered, and it is a commentary on their lives, on sort of the social history of the Victorian era, and also a commentary on our obsession with the serial killer, the psychopath, etc, etc, and how the victims get completely lost among the shuffle. So she has the most incredible nuance and amazing way of writing women that really reclaims their voices and like amplifies and lifts up these women, and is very understanding about what was open to them at the time and what was kind of socially acceptable, what was even possible. And I just think that also she's far better trained in terms of like as a historian, so I think that she would do an amazing job with something like Sex with Kings. If you have heard of another book similar to Sex with Kings that is not by Eleanor Harman, please do let me know, because it's one of the ones that I haven't finished because I could not stomach it anymore, and it's one of the only ones on this list that like I desperately want to read another version of. So yeah, if you know of one, please leave it in the comments down below. Final book I want to talk about is The Man Who Loved Books Too Much by Alison Hoover Bartlett. This is the true story of a thief, a detective, and a world of literary obsession. This is one of the kind of non-violent true crime books that I've read, the kind of heist style book, and it's basically about a guy who committed extensive amounts of credit card and check fraud to basically procure various very rare first edition fancy old books. He has been in and out of prison to do with it, and Alison is looking at his life and why he does these things and kind of the impacts it's had. And basically I just thought that she was far too sympathetic for this guy. Like, there was a total lack of really analysing anything that he'd done, really trying to hold him accountable in any meaningful way. She was very forgiving when discussing him, whereas actually this gentleman, it's not like he bought the books because of a genuine love of the books. He very much saw them as status symbols and didn't seem to understand that actually you are not entitled to everything in life. He kept constantly saying like, there are people out there who can afford these and I should be one of them and I deserve this stuff. And it's like, well, you haven't actually done anything to deserve it. So like, property is not just about taking what you think you're owed. So yeah, I just felt like she was far too flippant with her interactions with him, when actually he cost many people small fortunes, you know, crippled many businesses. And the rare book world is not really one where you go into it to make a ton of money. It's very much done for the love of it. Crime is generally bad anyway, but like you're defrauding people who are not these like huge organizations, but rather these very like mom and pop shops that are just trying to make a living in a world where they really just love books. This is the only one where I really don't know who I'd want to write it. I've read several different like non-violent true crime style books, all focused around heist type things. There's The Dinosaur Artist, there's The Feather Thief, there are plenty more out there. A Book Olive has an amazing video dedicated to all of these, and as a general rule of thumb, I've found all of them not overly the best read for me. It's one of the only area of true crime that I do genuinely enjoy, but I always find there's something a little bit lacking for me. I think that Kirk Wallace Johnson, who wrote The Feather Thief, is probably my favourite of all of them, so maybe he would be better for this one, but I really can't think of anybody who I think would do this any better personally. So that is it from me. These are 4 books, non-fiction books in particular, where I love the subject matter, I thought the idea was really fascinating, but just there was something about the way that the author approached it that really didn't work for me. If you enjoyed this video, please do let me know in the comments down below. I probably have enough to be able to do another fiction and non-fiction again, so I might add it on my kind of standard rotation or something that I do semi-regularly. Also, if you've read any of these books and completely disagree with me, please do let me know in the comments down below, because you know, opinions are entirely subjective, and if you liked them, then like, cool, power to you. Have a wonderful reading week, and I will chat to you soon. Bye!